This is our fifth day on the Viking Portugal River of Gold trip. And on today's agenda is scenic sailing up to the Spanish border, where we'll get off at the town of Barca de Alva, where we'll load our bus and head up to Castelo Rodrigo for a tour. Viking always has entertainment when you're doing scenic sailing, and today's entertainment will be a cooking demonstration. We're all going to learn how to make the Portuguese famous dessert, pastel de nata, and then we're going to have a presentation by our cruise director, Tamara, on all the different trips, both ocean and river, that Viking offers. And then this evening for dinner, Viking is putting on a themed dinner party, and it's called A Taste of Portugal, where we'll be able to try all the different specialty dishes that Portugal has to offer. And then to wrap it up, this evening after dinner, some Spanish Flamenco dancers will be entertaining us. And that's in preparation for our visit to Salamanca, Spain tomorrow. So in this video, I'll show you the day's activities. Traversing through the gorges of the Douro. Pretty interesting, but the narrowest section of the river that we've gone through. And there's pretty steep cliffs, so there's no wineries here, but there is a railway right beside us. As I said on my earlier videos, that on the Douro River in the Portugal section, there are 5 different locks, and we will go through all of those before we reach the Spanish border. I don't believe there's any lock stations in Spain, but we won't go into Spain whatsoever on the boat. So this is our 4th lock, and before the end of the day, we'll be going to our 5th lock. And here we go. And everybody running away, trying to keep their eye. Okay, now the chickens are all coming back. Yesterday we got really soaked when we went through it. So those are the people who learned to dodge the water. Now we're going up to the end here. And now the boat's stable in the lock. They'll raise us up. I believe it was 27 meters in this particular lock, so quite high, almost 100 feet. I'm always amazed at how far or how much of a lift these locks on the Douro Valley actually bring you up. Apparently the lock thing or the contraption is going down.
It's a technical term.
It's a technical term. The gate. the lock thing. The thingamabob. The guillotine lock. Oh, look, we're going to go through a nice gorge here. That's going to be fun. Okay, here we go.
That they blasted with dynamite, okay, to open the river up. So we are now, well, as you can see, we're going straight for those rocks. That's it. This is the end of our trip. No, we're going to turn left and go through that narrow stretch, and soon enough we're going to see that inscription on the rock. It's going to be on the starboard, fancy name for right hand side. Okay, I'm going to point it out if you want to take a picture.
So what we learned from our cruise director is that this section of the Douro River, it was quite a large rapids, and it was actually probably the most dangerous section of the river when people were transporting their goods. And this particular case was famous for bringing down the wine down to Porto, so they could store it there and then sell it and ship it overseas. So in the 1800s, they wanted to make it a lot more safe, so they actually took 12 years and blasted open a channel here and built these dams. And that eliminated the rapids, and when they did that, the workers wrote an inscription on the wall, and you'll be able to see it here right at the waterline, and it says in Latin, "Man conquered nature." It must have been quite the sense of achievement that after 12 years of construction, they were finally able to tame this section of the rapids. I think he's got a beer there. It's fishing.
That's international.
Yeah. Culture is the same everywhere. smoking a cigar, having a beer early in the morning while you fish, and not really caring about whether you catch anything. So we just saw some fishermen, and we didn't see a lot of fishermen on this particular trip, which surprised me, but enough, and they all seemed to be having a great time. But we did pass under a variety of different bridges, and this one in particular was a train bridge, and just as we were going underneath it, a train passed over, which was sort of cool. One of my fellow passengers jokingly said that it was really nice of Viking to schedule that the train coming over our heads just as we were passing underneath the bridge. Perfect timing, and was wondering how they managed to do that, which I thought was fairly funny. Anyways, it was really a pleasure to go under another bridge and catch the train going over. So now we'll head inside because there's a cooking demonstration going on. They're going to show us how to make the famous Portuguese dessert called pasta de nata.
Together, and then you top up with the liquid ingredients. Yeah. Directly straight in the saucepan. Yeah, warming up under constantly whisking till it gets nicely thick.
So we're getting a cooking demonstration on how to make pastel de nata. Here's the recipe.
That was a world premiere, yeah, on my first symphony. Good, now we warm up everything nicely. When we warm up the milk, it takes a couple of minutes. Probably the most of you keep the milk in the refrigerated, so it's cold. And cornstarch or potato starch needs a little high temperature till it gets thick. Yeah, when you whisk, don't pay only attention to the center of your saucepan. Yeah, cook it always on a lower temperature to control the custard, to control the milk, that it's not start burning or it doesn't get too fast, too hot. Yeah.
Now the best part of any cooking demonstration is sampling, and it was really, really good. So following the demonstration, we headed back out onto the deck and entertained ourselves with just viewing the banks and the ships going down the river. This one here is another Viking ship, the Viking Gita, which was just a few days ahead of us. So as you can see, the landscape in this area of the Douro River is much different than the earlier sections. We were told that there's a lot more granite in this area rather than schist, which is limestone, which is really agreeable for grape growing. So there's the vineyards here are primarily used for table wines rather than port. And we also learned that wine or grapes is not the main crop here, but olive oil is. So this region of Portugal supplies approximately 20% of the country's needs. So once again, we headed inside to the lounge area where our cruise director, Tamara, gave us a presentation of Viking cruises, both their ocean as well as rivers. And while there, we were served jinginha in these chocolate cups. And it's a traditional drink. It's a cherry brandy and really very tasty. And if you have the chance to try it, highly recommend it. It's found in many shops as well as on board the ship. We then headed back onto the deck because we reached our final lock on the Douro River, and this is the 5th lock that we'll be going through, and it's right at the Spanish border. And shortly after going through this particular lock, we'll be docking at Barca de Alva, which is very close to the Spanish border, and at that point we'll be loading on a bus and heading over to Castelo Rodrigo or Castelo Rodrigo. So here we are coming into Barca de Alva. There's a whole bunch of boats parked here. These are different cruise lines. I think there might be another Viking ship at the far end there. I would imagine that's where we're headed to. But Barca de Alva is the last town before the Spanish border. And we're going to be parked here for a couple of days. And today we're going to get off here and go to Castelo Rodrigo. And then tomorrow we're going to depart from here and we're going to go to Salamanca, Spain. So as soon as the ship docked, we immediately got off and loaded our bus to Castelo Rodrigo. So while on the bus, our tour guide explained to us that this area is famous for its olive oil production. It actually supplies about 20% of Portugal's needs. And the reason they grow olives here and make olive oil is that there's mostly granite here as opposed to limestone, and limestone is better for vineyards and grape production. So after about a 45-minute bus ride, we arrived at Castelo Rodrigo. So the castle includes the inner city, the walls, and a former palace, which unfortunately right now is in ruins. It was destroyed during the Spanish War, or the war with Spain, and it was never rebuilt. Now the castle was built on a former Roman settlement sometime before 500 AD. Later, the Moorish people controlled the area and built fortifications, and then after the 8th century, the Catholic peoples controlled the area. Now, one of the most interesting things about the village is that it has evidence of the Catholics, Muslims, and Jewish people living together here in harmony. In 1492, Portugal became a country and the war with Spain ended. At that time, the Spanish crown expelled, converted, or killed the Jewish people. Portugal realized that the Jewish people were knowledgeable and wealthy, so King John, the first king, invited them to Portugal. Apparently in 1492, something on the order of about 100,000 Jewish people came to the villages in this area. Unfortunately, the next king, King Manuel I, he married a Spanish princess, and as part of the wedding contract, he was required to expel the Jewish and Arabic people. But he came up with a different plan. He didn't expel them, but he forcibly converted them to Christianity. Many accepted this, but many also left. Many practiced their faith in secrecy. The ones that practiced their faith in secrecy, they did that in cellars and crypts, and they became locally known as cryptic Jews, and their houses in this city are marked with crosses to identify them.
From the 1500s.
The palace is from the 1500s.
Although it is in ruins, this is the one that you can go and explore. It's quite interesting to see inside how the divisions are made and so on. This was the palace of Cristóvão de Moura. Cristóvão de Moura was the Portuguese man who ruled Portugal on behalf of the Spanish kings. So during a period of our time, we were ruled by... against the Moors, that is called the reconquest, and that we reconquest, the Christian kings were reconquering the land back for Christianity from the Moors.
So this is a Christian church built in the 1100s, and it has a Romanesque type architecture. And then we're going to take a quick look inside here.
Quem me deu o contacto posso até foi o Luís Filipe Vitorino. Até pá, eu prefiro mandar um e-mail que as senhoras costumam responder também logo.
So this is a Catholic church. So these are pointed arches, and that's representative of a Gothic design. So I believe this is the statue of St. James. Looks like he's a very tall man on a pony, not a big horse. So, painting of the Last Supper. ceiling here is what's really fantastic. So this is St. James, a Catholic church, but it has Muslim influence as well, which is evidence of the communities of the Jewish, Muslim, and Catholic all lived in harmony here.
Are you Brian? But
So this is the Jewish quarter of the village.
So what would happen?
So a Moorish arch and an arch, I believe, for the Jewish, and people could enter either door, and they felt represented in this town. So religions were integrated here. Of course, once you had the Inquisition show up, that became a lot more of a challenge. So the water's not good now, but this used to be a freshwater spring cistern, and people used to bathe here.
And the Pope answered, no. What is the reason behind everything? Money. Yes, absolutely. The Pope said no because of money, because he said, you remember the previous king that baptized them all? They are all my Christians and they are paying to me directly, so I'm very happy with the situation. I have no interest in sending the Inquisition, no specific reason besides finance. So in the Inquisition was never, as that still had an operating synagogue. And that village is 1 hour drive from here to the south, still in the countryside. It is called Belmonte. And it's very funny because they did not have a synagogue. The synagogue is recent. What happened, and I'm going to be a little bit theatrical in this part of the story, but what happened was that in the 1980s, more or less, late 1980s, beginning of the 90s, someone from that village asked for a press conference. Newspapers, TV, because they had something to say to the world. So they went, TV channel, newspapers, press conference in that small village, like instruction. And all of a sudden,
Get the valley here around the castle and the castle walls. You can see some forests. You can see a lot of agricultural areas. And then you can see the village below. So historically people lived in the fortress here, and they had houses behind the walls. But as they grew, when they reached their peak in the 18th century, or in the 1800s, maybe 19th century, they started to move down below into the valley where the farms were located. And that's obviously newer now, but that's where they went to. And from here you can see why they built the castle here, because they have a very good viewpoint for all the lands around. So the ruler of this particular area was affiliated with the Spanish, and once Portugal got free of Spanish control, they attacked this castle and razed it. I was told it was burnt down, but it was torn down. Many of the artifacts inside and stones were removed and used to build other structures within the town. So it's been laying here, damaged like this, since about the 15th century, I believe. So we're looking at the old ruins here of the Castelo Rodrigo. Not much left of it. Well, a fun entrance to the castle. So the castle was destroyed by the population after Portugal regained its independence, I believe in 1640, because for 60 years they were basically joined together with Spain. So in 1640 they gained their independence from Spain, and the population associated the guy who was running this particular castle, who owned it, this palace at that time, as being part of the Spanish rule. So they attacked it and destroyed it, and it was never rebuilt.
After that, because we got independent in 1640, but there were battles nearby until 1664. 4 years later.
With the Spanish or with
the Spanish.
So the sign says it was destroyed. The palace was destroyed by the citizens, but we have a tour guide here who's an historian, and she said no, even though the official war with the signing of an armistice was 1640, the battles continued with Spain until the mid-1660s, and catapults that were brought into the area destroyed that castle. So we have conflicting stories. So after our tour of Castelo Rodrigo, we loaded back on our bus and headed back to the ship. But along the way, we stopped at this lookout point to have a look at the valley and check out all the olive groves that they have here. And then we proceeded back to the ship, where we had our traditional Portuguese dinner. They called it the Taste of Portugal, and that was excellent. Lots of different things, such as bacalhau or codfish, as well as duck, and a few other things, including sardines. And following dinner, we headed on over to the lounge, where they entertained us with some flamenco dancers.